Hollywood has seen many flops, but few crash and burn like this. The live-action Snow White remake wasn't just a cinematic disaster. It became a cultural lightning rod that scorched careers, shattered reputations, and left Disney scrambling for cover. And now, the drama just exploded. Jonah Platt, the son of Snow White producer Mark Platt, has publicly blamed lead actress Rachel Zegler for the film's humiliating downfall, accusing her of tanking not just the movie, but dragging down an entire cast and crew with her. Disney's Golden Princess is now radioactive, canceled across company platforms, and facing internal fury. But what's worse, she might not be going down alone. Once upon a time, Disney had a dream, a vision, a billion-dollar revival of one of its most sacred classics, Snow White, the 1937 masterpiece that built the House of Mouse, that cemented Walt Disney as a pioneer, that enchanted generations with a simple message, that kindness, courage, and true love could conquer anything. In 2024, Disney set out to bring that fairy tale back to life. And what they ended up with was a disaster so catastrophic, it's now studied in boardrooms as a case study in failure. The live-action Snow White was supposed to be Disney's next crown jewel, a cultural reset, the beginning of a new fairy tale era that would usher in a modern heroine for a modern world. But instead of magic, they got mayhem. Instead of applause, they got memes. And instead of a box office triumph, they got one of the most humiliating PR collapses in modern entertainment history. This wasn't just a flop, it was a crisis. A flameout so public, so explosive, that it didn't just scorch the film's reputation. It left behind a trail of torched careers, shattered trust, and behind-the-scenes bloodletting that has only now begun to surface. Because now, one of the key players behind the curtain is speaking out. And he's pointing fingers, not at the executives, not the script, not even at the critics. He's blaming her. Jonah Platt, Broadway actor, performer, and, most notably, son of Mark Platt, the lead producer of Disney's Snow White, has broken ranks. In a now viral statement, he publicly declared that the failure of Snow White wasn't a fluke. It wasn't bad luck. It was sabotage. And the saboteur? None other than Rachel Zegler, the film's lead actress. He didn't mince words. Jonah accused Zegler of actively working against the movie she was paid to promote, of mocking the legacy she was entrusted to carry, of turning a timeless fairy tale into a lecture, and alienating the very audience Disney needed to win over. And here's where it gets even messy, Jonah didn't just share his own opinion. He claimed to be speaking for the entire production, for the hundreds of cast and crew members who had put their souls into this movie, only to watch it implode because, as he said, their lead actress acted like she hated being a part of it. Let that sink in. This isn't just drama between a star and a studio. This is a producer's son throwing the lead under the bus on behalf of the people who made the movie. The Platt family name isn't small in Hollywood. They have pull. They have access. And they don't go rogue unless the internal situation is already radioactive. So what exactly happened here? How did Disney's beloved Snow White morph from a beacon of nostalgia into the butt of every joke on TikTok? How did a project designed to enchant audiences across the globe become the most ridiculed release in the company's modern history? Well, to understand the scale of the fallout, we need to talk numbers and pain. Let's start with the basics. The Snow White remake reportedly cost Disney over $330 million once reshoots, visual effects, and marketing were factored in. That alone made it one of the most expensive live-action fairy tales ever produced. But the return? A catastrophic loss, with industry analysts predicting the film would struggle to clear even half of its production cost. We're talking about a multi-hundred-million-dollar write-off. This wasn't just a cinematic misfire. It was a financial inferno, a disaster so immense it shook Disney's shareholder meetings. Internally, the studio began slashing budgets for future live-action remakes. Several upcoming reboots were quietly shelved or delayed. Executives began reassessing the company's entire creative strategy, and people started getting fired. And then came the public backlash. Oh, the backlash. The moment Rachel Zegler's interviews began circulating, mocking Prince Charming, throwing shade at the original film and sarcastically declaring her version of Snow White wouldn't be dreaming about love or waiting for a man. Fans were done. Parents who had once planned family trips to the theater were now saying pass. The core Disney audience, the nostalgic 90s kids and their children, turned off, and they made their disappointment loud. What was supposed to be a celebration of empowerment became a cultural flashpoint. Critics said it reeked of corporate pandering. Others argued that the film's messaging was so cynical, it forgot the magic of the original. And worse, online trolls found a new target. Zegler became a lightning rod for hate. Yes, but so did Disney itself. The brand, once untouchable, now looked out of touch. Arrogant, detached from its audience. So now you've got a massive financial loss, a PR nightmare, and a lead actress being disowned by the very people who once championed her. But here's the part no one expected. Disney isn't defending her. They're not protecting her. In fact, they've started distancing themselves entirely. Gone are the promotional posts. The official Disney accounts have scrubbed mentions of Zegler. Behind the scenes, insiders say she's been unofficially benched, meaning she's no longer being considered for future major roles within the company. In short, she's been canceled by the mouse. And yet, this is only the beginning. Because the Platt family firing shots publicly? That's not just petty gossip. That's a signal. A message to everyone in the industry that Rachel Zegler is no longer protected. That Disney has officially decided she's not worth defending. That if you take the studio down with you, they'll return the favor. What we're witnessing isn't just a failed movie. It's a collapse. A fairy tale imploding in real time. A cautionary tale not about evil queens or poisoned apples, but about the dark side of Hollywood ambition, corporate politics, and the price of forgetting your audience. And as the smoke clears over the wreckage of Snow White, one thing is painfully clear. Disney didn't just lose a movie. They lost the trust of the very people who once believed in their magic. Once the Golden Girl, now the Ghost. Rachel Zegler was supposed to be Disney's next princess icon. A real-life Cinderella story. A Colombian-American breakout, star discovered on social media, cast by Steven Spielberg himself in West Side Story, and then handpicked to headline Disney's Snow White. This was the dream, the elevation, the coronation of a new kind of Disney royalty. But if you search for her now on Disney's platforms, good luck. Because somewhere between the first teaser trailer and the full-blown PR collapse, Disney did something chilling, something calculated, something final. They erased her. Promotional images of Rachel in costume as Snow White, scrubbed. Her quotes from press junkets, gone. Scheduled talk show appearances, canceled. Red carpet invites, retracted. It's as if she was never the face of one of the most expensive projects in Disney history. Like her Snow White never existed. No official statement. No public denouncement. Just silence. A complete media blackout. And in Hollywood, that silence screams. Because this isn't normal. Studios defend their talent. Especially when they're under fire. Especially when they're the lead of a tentpole release. But in Zegler's case, the studio that once championed her rise didn't just go quiet. They disappeared her. The red flags started subtly. After her controversial interviews sparked backlash, Disney PR initially tried to clean it up. There were whispers of internal memos, encouraging staff to steer focus back to the film's visuals, the craftsmanship, the legacy. But Zegler kept talking. More interviews surfaced, more sarcastic quotes, more disdain for the original Snow White and the fairy tale romance that defined it. Then came the jokes, the viral TikToks, the edited montages of Zegler dragging the film, side by side with scenes from the original, scenes audiences loved. And soon, what was once awkward became unforgivable. She wasn't just misspeaking. She was, in Disney's eyes, undermining the brand. And that's the one sin the mouse cannot forgive. You see, Disney's kingdom isn't built on magic alone. It's built on control. Meticulous control over image, legacy, and public perception. And Rachel Zegler, the girl who was meant to embody a new generation of princesses, suddenly became a rogue agent. A PR liability. A threat to the billion-dollar machine. And that's when the knives came out. Sources close to the production say the mood shifted dramatically behind the scenes. Once treated like Hollywood royalty, Zegler was suddenly persona non grata. Executives stopped taking her calls. Press contacts were instructed to pivot to the production design, the costumes, the effects, anything but Rachel. Her name was removed from internal memos. Photos of her were replaced with concept art and marketing decks. Reporters were told not to ask about her during junkets. She wasn't just sidelined. She was blacklisted. Even more telling, her co-stars stopped publicly defending her. Not one castmate came to her aid during the peak of the backlash. No Instagram support. No Twitter love. Nothing. Just deafening silence like they'd been told, stay out of this or you're next. And Disney? They moved on like she never existed. In late 2024, several upcoming Disney projects quietly removed Zegler from consideration. Rumors swirled that she'd been in talks for a live-action Tangled adaptation, that she was being considered for a Disney Plus Princess series, that she had development deals in place. One by one, those conversations went dark. And still, not a word from the mouse. Why? Because for Disney, this wasn't just a bad press cycle. This was betrayal. They gave her the keys to the kingdom, and she used them to trash the castle. She mocked their legacy, mocked their fans, mocked their fairy tales. And in doing so, she did the one thing Disney cannot tolerate. She made magic look stupid. For a company that survives on illusion, that's lethal. What makes this blacklisting so brutal, so complete, is how surgical it is. Disney didn't have to publicly fire her. They didn't issue a statement. They didn't need to, because in Hollywood, when Disney shuts the door, everyone else hears it, loud and clear. Suddenly, her name started disappearing from industry shortlists. Her reps stopped sending out pressers. New film deals dried up. Casting directors moving on. No drama. No headlines. Just the cold, quiet hum of a career going off the radar. And for Rachel, that silence may be the loudest message of all. Because in an industry that worships fame, when a studio decides you're done, they won't scream it from the rooftops. They'll do what Disney just did. Remove your shadow. Pull your name from their future. And let the world forget you. Rachel Zegler wasn't just a star who flopped. She became a cautionary tale. A reminder that when you speak for the kingdom, you better know the story they want to tell. Because once the fairy tale crumbles, the castle doesn't catch you when you fall. It buries you. It should have been a press tour. It turned into a public execution. What Rachel Zegler said during the Snow White promo circuit didn't just derail a movie. It detonated a cultural landmine. And the worst part? She wasn't misquoted. She wasn't taken out of context. No one twisted her words. She said what she said. Clearly. Repeatedly. Proudly. Let's rewind to the first shockwave. The original Snow White? She's not going to be saved by the prince. She's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. It sounded like a bold reimagining, until people realized it was being said with a smirk. And it didn't stop there. Another clip surfaced. Rachel, in a sit-down interview, rolled her eyes at the 1937 original and laughed. It's 2022. We don't need a man to save us. That's creepy, honestly. He literally stalks her through the woods. Cue the internet imploding. Within hours, the backlash was everywhere. Not just in comment sections or TikTok duets, but in mainstream headlines. Snow White actress calls Prince creepy splashed across entertainment blogs. Conservative pundits called it a woke war on classics. But even progressive fans, Disney loyalists who wanted to love her, felt betrayed. Because she wasn't just critiquing a film. She was mocking a legacy. Their legacy. This wasn't a rogue comment in one interview. It was a pattern. Interview after interview. Zegler seemed less like a grateful rising star and more like a reluctant spokesperson forced to promote a film she didn't even like. She called the story outdated, laughed about how little time she spent with the male lead, brushed off questions about romance, dismissed the iconic dress as not something she'd ever wear. And then came the final straw, delivered with a sarcastic chuckle. The prince? Oh yeah, he was literally just there. We cut so much of his stuff, you guys. He's not important. Parents were livid. This wasn't the empowered princess they were promised. It was open contempt for the story that had enchanted generations. And to them, that wasn't empowerment. That was disrespect. Moms on TikTok filmed tearful videos saying their daughters didn't want to see the movie anymore. Dads were furious their favorite childhood tale was now the punchline of its own marketing campaign. YouTube critics had a field day. The anti-woke crowd pounced, of course, but what Disney didn't expect was the mainstream fan base siding with them this time. People weren't angry because Zegler was feminist. They were angry because she was dismissive, because she acted like she was above the fairy tale while still cashing in on its crown. And when fans saw that, the illusion shattered. This wasn't a princess. This was a rebel without a cause, and definitely without a kingdom. The memes came first. Hundreds of them. Zegler side by side with the animated Snow White, mocking her smile. Clips of her PR blunders set to circus music. One particularly viral TikTok cut her interviews with quotes from Walt Disney himself, making it look like she was arguing with the ghost of the company's founder. Then came the fan edits, fixing her performance with AI voiceovers, recasting her role entirely. Entire comment sections became open forums for dragging Rachel, mocking her tone, dissecting her posture, calling her everything from ungrateful to arrogant to downright mean. And for every fan who defended her, there were 10 more asking, why would you say yes to a role you clearly hate? Some blamed the studio for letting the interviews air in the first place. But most blamed her, because Zegler didn't just burn a bridge, she live-streamed it, with matches in both hands. And every smirk, every sarcastic quote, every eye roll was gasoline. It became one of the rare moments in pop culture where nearly everyone, right, left, fans, critics, agreed on something. And that something was Rachel Zegler had just committed PR suicide. The Hollywood Reporter quietly noted the absence of any damage control. No heartfelt apology. No attempt to clarify. No mentor stepping in to smooth things over. Zegler simply kept tweeting, kept doubling down, even liked tweets mocking fans who called her out. And in doing so, she sealed her fate. Because in this business, words matter. Words are your brand. And when your job is to bring childhood magic to life, and instead you torch the storybook in front of the cameras, the audience doesn't forgive. They unsubscribe. So what started as a fairy tale press tour became a cautionary tale in real time. A case study in what happens when a star mistakes sarcasm for strategy. When a role meant to launch you becomes the wreckage that defines you. And the worst part? Disney didn't need to say a word. Because Rachel Zegler already did. Let's pull back the curtain. Because what the public saw, the disastrous interviews, the memes, the backlash, was only the surface of a much deeper, much messier meltdown. Behind the scenes of Disney's Snow White remake wasn't just a troubled production. It was a full-blown identity crisis. From the very beginning, insiders say the vibe was off. The script had already gone through multiple rewrites before cameras started rolling. The tone kept shifting. Was this a classic fairy tale with a modern twist? Or a satire? Or a girl boss empowerment vehicle? The executives couldn't decide. The writers couldn't agree. And the cast? They were stuck in the middle of a tug-of-war between nostalgia and reinvention. Then came the infamous test screenings. According to multiple sources, the first internal cut of Snow White bombed so badly during private screenings that Disney execs walked out early. Not because it was offensive, not because it was bad, but because it was nothing. Emotionally flat, visually awkward, tonally confused. One executive reportedly called it a story without a soul. Another said the film looks like it was written by AI and directed by committee. Audiences didn't laugh. They didn't cry. They didn't clap. They just stared. So Disney panicked. More rewrites, reshoots, a rush job in post-production. But the problems were too baked in to fix, especially the dwarfs. Or rather, the CGI forest companions, as Disney tried to call them. Let's talk about that disaster. The decision to replace the 7 dwarfs with a ragtag group of diverse, CGI-enhanced forest travelers wasn't just controversial, it was confusing. Disney wanted to avoid offending anyone. But in trying to preempt outrage, they sparked more of it. Fans felt like iconic characters were being erased. Dwarfism advocates felt patronized. Even Peter Dinklage, an actor with dwarfism, criticized the move before Disney had finalized what the replacements would even look like. And when the first leaked set photos hit the internet, it got worse. Audiences thought it was a joke. Literally, memes exploded overnight comparing the new characters to dollar store Lord of the Rings extras. One viral tweet summed up the general reaction. This looks like a parody made by people who hate Disney. But the chaos didn't stop with characters. Behind the camera, morale was low. Insiders say the cast had minimal chemistry. The director clashed with producers. And every creative decision was filtered through an exhausting checklist of brand safety requirements. The result? A movie that looked polished on paper but felt emotionally hollow in execution. Production costs ballooned. VFX teams were overworked, trying to fix things in post that couldn't be saved on set. Even Zegler's performance, described internally as detached, was flagged during edits. But it was too late to recast, too expensive to reshoot, so they tried to edit around her. Shorten her scenes, reframe the story, shift focus. None of it worked. At one point, there were conversations, quiet, off-the-record conversations, about quietly shelving the movie and retooling it for Disney+. But the budget was already too high. Investors wanted a return. Merchandising partners were locked in. So Disney doubled down on PR instead. Big mistake, because as the marketing campaign rolled out, it only made things worse. The more Rachel Zegler spoke, the more apparent it became that she didn't believe in the project. Or worse, she believed the project was beneath her. Disney had hoped her passion would carry the press tour. What they got instead was viral backlash and a brand new label they never expected to be stuck with. Out of touch, out of ideas, out of magic. And here's the real kicker. This wasn't just about Snow White. This was the culmination of a pattern. Fans were already tired. Tired of remakes. Tired of corporate morality plays disguised as stories. Tired of Disney taking legacy IP and turning into lifeless reboots with bloated budgets and zero charm. The disconnect had been growing for years. But Snow White made it impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a failed film. It was a red flag. A blinking warning sign that somewhere between Bob Iger's return, the Disney Plus losses, and the endless pipeline of uninspired reboots, Disney had lost the plot. Literally. So now the question lingers in the air like the smell of scorched fairy dust. Was this doomed from the start? Did the execs know? Did the cast know? Did anyone at the top of the mouse house stop to ask, what if audiences don't want this? Because what started as a simple remake became a mirror held up to a corporation in chaos. One where vision is replaced by metrics, where legacy is sacrificed for algorithms, and where the only thing more fragile than Disney's reputation is the illusion that they still know what they're doing. And now, the Magic Kingdom is looking a lot more like a crumbling empire. What happens when the people Disney tries to quietly bury refuse to stay silent? What began as a PR crisis is now something else entirely. This isn't just backlash. It's a battle. Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, once cast as the studio's golden duo, are now at the heart of a power struggle that threatens to rip open the very seams of Disney's carefully controlled narrative. Because they've had enough. After months of online mockery, studio silence, and whispers of blame coming from behind corporate doors, both actresses have started pushing back. And what started as subtle shade is now looking more like open war. It began with the legal cracks. Multiple insiders report that Zegler's team was the first to get wind of what Disney was planning after the film's disastrous reception. There were quiet meetings, private emails, executives exploring refund scenarios, code for cutting ties, minimizing financial damage, and possibly clawing back portions of the star's back-end deals. But Zegler's contract? It was airtight. And here's the twist. Disney wanted her to walk away first. They were counting on the backlash, hoping she'd quietly exit stage left so they could reposition the narrative, recast if necessary, and move on. She didn't. Instead, her team began lawyering up. Aggressively. Sources close to the production say Disney attempted to renegotiate promotional obligations after the internet erupted over Zegler's viral press clips. They wanted to reduce her presence, limit damage. But Zegler's camp refused. She was under contract. She showed up. She did the job. If Disney was looking for a scapegoat, they weren't getting it without a fight. Then came Gal Gadot. For months, she'd stayed quiet, eerily so. No statements, no press appearances, just polite silence as the storm raged around her co-star. Many assumed she was distancing herself, playing it safe. But in truth, she was watching, calculating. Because here's the thing about Gadot, she's not just an actress. She's a producer, a global brand, a political lightning rod in her own right. And when Disney began floating narratives that maybe the evil queen had been too campy, too disconnected from the tone, she knew exactly what was happening. So she called their bluff. Legal teams were activated. Gadot's reps reportedly warned the studio to stop the leaks coming from inside Disney's PR machine. According to one insider, Gadot made it clear, if they tried to dump blame on her character, her performance, or her public image, she would fight back. Publicly, legally, brutally. And that's when the tone changed. Disney, once so quick to distance themselves from the film's stars, suddenly went quiet. No more leaks. No more veiled critiques. Because what had started as a simple image repair strategy had now escalated into a legal standoff. And behind the scenes, things were ugly. There were rumors of threatened lawsuits, heated calls between agents and executives. Zegler's team accused Disney of setting her up to fail by giving her a no-win role, then hanging her out to dry. Gadot's team accused the studio of violating trust, of risking reputational damage without cause, of trying to retroactively shift the failure of Snow White onto its two female leads. And here's the kicker. Disney underestimated them both. They thought Zegler was too green to push back, that she'd beg for forgiveness, play nice, fade away. They thought Gadot was too polished, too brand conscious to get involved. They were wrong. Twice. Because Zegler may be young, but she's not naive. She knows what it means when a studio lets the wolves circle and says nothing. She's been in this town long enough to see what happens to actresses who don't control their own narrative. And Gadot? She's been through worse. She knows what public perception can do. She knows how fast a legacy can be rewritten if you don't fight for it. And now, these two women, so different in public persona, yet suddenly aligned in purpose, are pushing back. No more silence. No more apologies. No more being pawns in Disney's damage control playbook. And here's the most dangerous part for Disney. They're winning the narrative. Social media has shifted. Fans, once mocking, are now asking questions. Was Zegler really the villain? Or was she thrown under the bus? Did Gadot really misfire on purpose? Or was she handed a script so disjointed no actor could salvage it? Even industry insiders are beginning to murmur. Maybe the studio set them up. Maybe they were trying to cover for a project that was already broken. Maybe the stars were right all along. The more Disney stays quiet, the more that silence screams guilt. This isn't just about two actresses defending their reputations. It's about power, control, survival. Zegler and Gadot aren't going quietly. They're taking their fight public. And now the entire industry is watching to see who blinks first. Because when the mouse turns on you, you're expected to disappear. But this time, the stars bit back. And in this fairy tale turned thriller, the princess and the queen aren't victims. They're warriors. And the kingdom? It's bleeding. It was supposed to be a family. That's how Hollywood likes to brand itself. Tight-knit, supportive, united. But now, it's open season. What's happening with Rachel Zegler isn't just a PR collapse. It's a symptom, a warning sign, a red flare in the night sky that something deeper, darker, and far more chaotic is happening inside the industry itself. Because for the first time in recent memory, Hollywood is turning on its own. And Zegler, she's become the lightning rod. It's not just that her Snow White remake flopped. It's not just the press clips or the awkward sound bites or the viral backlash. That would have been survivable. We've seen careers come back from worse. The real story here is that the very people who should be defending her, the progressive voices, the studio allies, the activist circles that once praised her casting, are gone. Silent. Or worse, publicly distancing themselves. And that silence? It's deafening. Because if Rachel Zegler's downfall tells us anything, it's this. Even in Hollywood, loyalty has limits. When the backlash began, many assumed the storm would pass. Zegler was a rising star, a Latina lead in a beloved fairy tale reboot, handpicked to carry a major Disney franchise. She checked all the right boxes. The studio had positioned her as a Gen Z role model, an outspoken feminist icon, a fresh face with a Broadway belt. But the second the audience pushed back, the industry flinched. Instead of rallying behind her, publicists ghosted. Fellow actors avoided comment. Talk show invitations mysteriously evaporated. Even progressive media outlets that once praised her for speaking out against the outdated messages of the original Snow White began shifting their tone. She went from trailblazer to liability in a matter of weeks. Because here's the dirty secret no one wants to admit. When art becomes politics, and politics become box office, you don't get second chances. Hollywood has been trying to walk an impossible tightrope. Appease critics, appeal to activists, please fans, and somehow still make money. But with Zegler, that balancing act collapsed. She spoke her truth. She criticized a legacy film. She doubled down. But instead of praise, she got firebombed. Parents called her disrespectful. Fans said she hated the character she was playing. Conservatives blasted her as woke poison, while centrists just rolled their eyes and checked out. Even progressive circles began whispering, was this really the fight we wanted to pick? And now, the industry that once propped her up is tearing itself apart. Executives are livid. One insider described the internal mood at Disney as panicked fury. They gambled on a bold reinvention and lost. Big. Some blamed the marketing team. Others blame the directors. Still others quietly point the finger at Zegler herself, saying she went off script, made the story about herself, alienated the core audience. But creatives? They're confused. Behind the scenes, writers and producers are asking, what do you want from us? You told us to reimagine the classics. You told us to be bold. You told us to push the conversation forward. And now you're telling us we pushed too far? The truth is, Hollywood is now caught in a cultural civil war. On one side, the studios, obsessed with quarterly earnings, terrified of backlash, willing to sacrifice any star, any director, any project if it means salvaging their brand. On the other, the creatives, the actors, the writers, people like Zegler, who believed in the mission they were sold, who thought this industry was ready to evolve, who thought the risk was worth it. In the middle, audiences, exhausted, divided, and increasingly skeptical of what's coming out of Hollywood's pipeline. The Zegler fallout has become a cautionary tale, not just about ego, or poor messaging, or online outrage, but about what happens when an entire industry loses the plot. You can feel the fracture lines now, ripping through boardrooms and backlots. Executives whispering about getting back to basics. Writers furious that their work is being re-edited into oblivion by committee. Actors wondering if it's safer to say nothing than to say anything at all. Because if someone like Rachel Zegler, young, talented, outspoken, politically on-brand, can get blacklisted overnight, who's next? And make no mistake, the blacklist is real. You won't hear the words spoken out loud, but it's there. The roles that quietly disappear, the meetings that get postponed, the sudden drop in visibility. That's how the machine works. Quiet punishment, silent exile. It's not just Disney. It's the entire town. Studios are closing ranks. Agencies are covering their tracks. Everyone's waiting to see how much fallout is coming and who they might need to sacrifice next. Because in the end, Zegler didn't just get canceled by fans. She got abandoned by the very system that promised to protect her. And that's the real horror story here. Not a bad press tour, not a flopped fairy tale, but a moment when Hollywood revealed what it really is. A machine that eats its young. It's not just a bad movie. It's not just a viral scandal. Not just a failed press tour, a flop box office, or a casting controversy. This is brand collapse. And for a company like Disney, that's catastrophic. Because Disney was never just a studio. It was the dream machine. It built its empire not just on content, but on trust. The kind of trust only a few brands in the world ever achieve. Parents trusted Disney to babysit their kids. Audiences trusted Disney to deliver magic. Generations trusted Disney to honor tradition. And now, that trust is cracked. The brand that once represented timeless wonder has become a punchline, a target, a cautionary tale. Snow White was supposed to be a crown jewel, a modern reimagining of the 1937 classic that started it all, the very first full-length animated feature, the film that built the Disney empire. Instead, it became the match that lit a wildfire. Because this wasn't just a failure. It was a desecration. Ask anyone over the age of 30 what Snow White means to them. They'll mention magic, childhood, innocence, a time before cynicism. A story so simple and pure it defined what fairy tale should be. Now, that legacy's been dragged through the mud. When Disney announced the live-action reboot, fans were cautiously optimistic. There was hope, a hunger for nostalgia. People wanted to believe Disney still had it. But what they got was contempt. That's what stung the most. This Snow White didn't just miss the mark, it sneered at it. The beloved dwarfs? Replaced with CGI stand-ins and stripped of their meaning. The romantic prince? Erased. The classic songs? Rewritten or removed. The core message? Mocked by its own lead actress in interviews that went viral for all the wrong reasons. And the audience felt it. Not just disappointment, but betrayal. Because this wasn't just a movie. They were messing with a memory. And Disney didn't just fail to deliver magic. They delivered a lecture. They turned fairy tale into fingerwag. And the people who grew up loving Snow White, the moms and dads now raising their own kids, walked away feeling alienated, uninvited, and insulted. The brand damage? Massive. Merchandise tied to the film? Dead on arrival. Toy shelves stayed full. Retailers quietly pulled themed items. Even Disneyland reportedly saw a drop in interest for Snow White branded experiences. No one wanted to wear this version of the story. Because how do you market a product when even its star seems to resent it? Family trust? Shattered. The backlash among parents was sharp and swift. Many felt this wasn't age-appropriate anymore. Others just didn't want their kids exposed to what they saw as preachy, cynical storytelling masquerading as modern values. And it wasn't just conservatives complaining. Liberal parents were rolling their eyes too, saying, this isn't empowerment. It's just bad storytelling. Streaming rewatch numbers of the original Snow White briefly spiked, before crashing again, almost like audiences were trying to rinse the taste of the reboot from their minds. And Disney knows. Internally, sources have admitted morale is down. One insider described the vibe as funeral-level silence. Even among executives, there's confusion. How do we get here? The answer? They broke the covenant. For decades, Disney operated on a sacred contract. We give you magic, you give us loyalty. But now the illusion is gone. Parents are no longer buying in without question. Audiences are fact-checking every trailer, every casting choice, every rewrite. The myth of Disney as a flawless curator of childhood dreams? It's over. And the financial bleeding is real. Disney's 2025 Q1 report hinted at underperformance in consumer products tied to legacy IPs. That's code for people stop buying the stuff. Box office forecasts for future remakes have been quietly revised downward. And even within the parks, where nostalgia used to be a money-printing machine, guest feedback around brand fatigue is increasing. Because when Snow White fails, it shakes the whole castle. It plants a seed of doubt in every fan. If they ruin this, what's next? Peter Pan? Hercules? The Lion King? Again? The brand isn't just bruised. It's been stripped of its aura. What once felt sacred, those hand-drawn classics, those melodies, those moral arcs, is now up for grabs in a corporate game of reimagine and cash in. But the cash? It's not coming. Because this isn't just about Snow White. It's about a larger sense of decay. Disney isn't the underdog anymore. It's not the scrappy dreamer making magic in a garage. It's a corporation, a billion-dollar titan that's forgotten why it mattered in the first place. And Snow White was the red flag fans couldn't ignore. The internet memes? Brutal. The YouTube essays? Ruthless. The TikToks comparing the 1937 film to the reboot? Devastating. People aren't laughing with Disney anymore. They're laughing at it. And in a world driven by perception, that shift is lethal. Because Disney doesn't just sell movies. It sells belief. Belief in happily ever afters. Belief in transformation. Belief that good stories still matter. When you break that belief, you don't just lose a customer. You lose a generation. Let's pull back. We've talked about the fallout, the failed film, the angry fans, the broken brand. But now it's time to ask the one question no one at Disney wants you to ask. Who's really to blame? Because yes, Rachel Zegler's interviews were painful. Yes, her tone was dismissive. Yes, her commentary sparked outrage across every social platform imaginable. But what if she was just the messenger? What if the things that made fans furious weren't off-script moments of ego or ignorance, but exactly what Disney wanted? Let's rewind to those press clips, the ones that went viral, the ones that turned Zegler into public enemy number one. The smirk, the now infamous, "she's not going to be saved by the prince" comment. The dismissal of the original film as weird and outdated. Those weren't drunken off-the-cuff slips. Those were rehearsed sound bites. And more importantly, they were on brand, Disney's new brand. This wasn't a rogue actress tearing down tradition. This was an actress following the corporate script, a script handed to her by the studio itself. Because for the past few years, Disney has been undergoing a transformation, a pivot, a rebrand. No longer content with simply entertaining, it wanted to educate. It wanted to be progressive. It wanted to be seen as forward-thinking. And in doing so, it began systematically rewriting its legacy. Fairy tales were no longer fairy tales. They were problematic relics. Happy endings were no longer earned. They were revised. And traditional characters? Suddenly up for critique. This wasn't just about Snow White. This was about Disney trying to drag its entire catalog into the modern age, whether audiences wanted it or not. And actresses like Rachel Zegler, they were handpicked to deliver that message. Young, vocal, socially conscious, marketable to Gen Z. She wasn't cast despite her takes. She was cast because of them. Same with Gal Gadot. Same with Halle Bailey. Same with every new live-action heroine tasked with redefining the Disney princess. These weren't casting choices. They were statements. So if Zegler was just doing her job, just echoing the studio's approved talking points, how did it all backfire so catastrophically? Simple. Because the audience wasn't on board. Disney forgot who it was selling to. It bet the house on Twitter applause and forgot about the moms in the Midwest. It built an entire marketing strategy around disruption instead of delight. And then it blamed the backlash on the faces it had pushed to the front lines. So yes, Zegler's tone was smug. Yes, she alienated fans. But was she truly the villain? Or was she just the mouthpiece of a company that no longer understood its own magic? Behind the scenes, insiders are starting to talk. Former employees whisper about strategy meetings where deconstruction was the goal. Marketing teams briefed on how to handle toxic nostalgia. Script notes that intentionally removed romantic arcs and traditional hero journeys because those were deemed dated. This wasn't sabotage from the cast. This was self-sabotage from the top. Because somewhere along the way, Disney stopped asking, what makes a great story? And started asking, what makes us look progressive on Instagram? And that shift, it bled into everything. The casting, the marketing, the merchandising, even the script itself. And when the backlash came, fast, fiery, and loud, Disney did what all panic studios do. They passed the blame. They let Zegler take the fall. They let fans think this was her arrogance, her mistake, her war against tradition. But quietly, they were the ones who loaded the gun. They gave her the message. They fed her the narrative. They set the stage. She just said it out loud. And that's the bitter irony. Because in trying to modernize a classic, Disney may have destroyed it. In chasing a new audience, they alienated the old. In trying to seem woke, they broke their own fairy tale. So who's to blame? Is it Rachel Zegler, the young actress handed a corporate manifesto and thrown to the wolves? Or is it Disney, so obsessed with optics, so afraid of irrelevance, that it forgot the one thing it used to do better than anyone: tell timeless stories. In the end, Snow White became a tragedy. Not because of bad acting, not because of angry fans, but because Disney betrayed its own formula. And now, the kingdom is crumbling. Because once upon a time, Disney knew how to make dreams come true. Now, it can't even sell a fairy tale.